representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Von Horn.
If you're not a part of the Franchise Secrets Facebook group, what are you waiting for? It's franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. I cannot believe how valuable this group turned out to be. When someone asks a question, the feedback is honest, authentic, very helpful, and it's from multiple perspectives. If you're not sure that you're getting the most accurate information about franchising, then check out the largest, most helpful Facebook group in all of franchising. Whether you're a Z, a Zor, a buyer, or investor, join our free Facebook group at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. Hey, it's Erik. In this episode of the podcast, I interviewed Butch Mogavero. Butch is a friend of mine. He's the franchisor of Boulder Designs and Border Magic. By the way, both of those brands are part of my portfolio of brands, and we'll get into that a little bit into the episode. But Butch is an amazing man. We talked about all kinds of things. He's a franchisor. He is a franchisee as well. He's got an advisory council that really helps him as a franchisor be a better franchisor because of those franchisees. He's got a secret sauce, and this is one of very few brands that have this amazing differentiation point of having a product that nobody else has. And we talk about a large company that tried to duplicate it and tried to figure out what that secret sauce is, and they couldn't. You'll find that funny. But it's one of these brands. It's an affordable, inexpensive, kind of dirty, boring brand that is a brand that I absolutely love. So I hope you enjoy the show. Butch, good to see you, man. It was like I just saw you. We just saw each other in Waco.
It's because you did.
Yeah. We had a good time. It was a whirlwind of a trip, but I took a last minute trip just to come see you out in Waco. And then I got some random cool stuff that I did in Austin. And then we came up and spent a good amount of time with you and the team over at Boulder Designs and Border Magic. So let's talk about those two brands. First, before we get to that, like give the audience a bit of your background, a bit of your story.
How far back you want to go? Actually, John Hayes is writing a book on it right now. So apparently somebody thinks it's interesting, but left home at a very early age and got into some carpet cleaning on my own, and I found a company called Rainbow International, which is part of the Dwyer Group back in the middle 1980s. One thing led to another. I ended up buying the franchise from the guy I worked for. Started out as a carpet cleaner's helper, then moved up to carpet cleaner and then manager, and then bought the franchise. Moved all the way up to the number one franchise in the nation back when Don Dwyer still had it. And they moved me to the home office in 1994 and didn't like that at all. It was hard to stay in an office, especially when I'd been out on my own for quite a while. So I acquired the local franchise, the home office franchise, if you will, and continued working at the Dwyer Group off and on for the next 15 years and brought the carpet cleaning part of it into restoration. And that's what I enjoyed doing. I still do it to this day. And I enjoyed that a lot and ended up selling franchises for the home office and marketing with them on how to get business. I had done pretty well with my carpet cleaning and the restoration. So I started helping other franchisees do that at the office, including selling franchises. Worked beside Don Dwyer for a few years before he passed away. And then John Apple took over and started working for him, exclusively without Don, obviously. And then I started doing some curbing. I kept seeing this at a franchise show, all over actually franchise shows. And thought it was a neat product and ended up buying that in about 2000. And then decided to go on my own. I looked up one day and we were doing $1.5 million in but quick curb back then. And, but had a lot of issues with it cracking and found this Border Magic company online and called them. And again, long story short, I ended up buying and acquiring the whole company back in 2016. They just had a handful of franchises and most of them really not very active. And so we had about a year of buying back territories, changing a few things. But the one thing we never changed was the actual product and how well it did. We actually had set some money aside to change the product if needed and make it a little better. And we ended up spending that money elsewhere because we didn't need to do that. It was as good as you could get. And it's still the same today. We kind of joke, if you look back in the past, like the bread tie or something, it just doesn't really ever get any better. It stays the same, so that's the same as this. The guy that invented it, extremely good at inventing, and just struggled with franchising, support, things like that I had learned from the Dwyer Group and had, in my opinion, had become pretty good at. So
that's not too uncommon. Like founders, they have some bumps along the road, or they're not meant to be a founder, or different things. But what I think is super interesting about this is they had this brand, or two brands had a secret sauce. I call it the secret sauce. I call it the Coke, like the Coke recipe. Like nobody knows the Coke recipe. It's not, other people can make Coke, but they can't make Coke. They can try to. It's not patented. It's not, somebody can feel free to try to copy this unique thing about what you have, but nobody's been able to do it. So I want to talk about that a little bit. But this is, so the audience knows this is one of my portfolio brands. And what a portfolio brand to me looks like is either I have equity, advisory shares, profit sharing, or something like that. So I've both Boulder Designs and Boulder Magic are one of my portfolio companies. And so I get to see Butch and get to talk to him, and we get to look at what we can do with both of these brands. And I like cool, fun, sexy businesses that are like amazing and fun to be a part of. But what I also like are, some people say it this way, they're very affordable, boring businesses that people just need. And during the pandemic, and in recessions and in downturns, some brands are just like, you wish that you owned them. And so this is one of these brands that I just absolutely love. So, but let's talk about this secret sauce. What is this secret sauce that nobody else has been able to R&D, rip off and duplicate?
Yeah, we actually have two of them, and a lot of people think it's the same thing because of the two companies that we have are similar in some areas, but actually quite a bit different. Boulder Designs is made in a controlled environment inside area, where Boulder Magic is actually extruded out of a machine and goes right onto the ground. So it goes through a slip form in the machine that has to be very slick, or it would gum up. And that can't happen with the Boulder Magic. So, and then also it's laid right on the ground, which is into the dirt, which absorbs moisture faster than something made on metal. So they are quite a bit different. A lot of our franchisees have both brands, and if they ran out of one product, it's not used for the other. So it's a lot of people, a little bit of misconception, but the ideas, the theories behind both of them are quite the same. So it's a neat business, but two concrete chemists invented this. They were father son. I think between them have well over 100 years of experience, and was actually invented by mistake. The son left a mixer on over a weekend, and whatever that produced was different than the dad had ever seen. So they started playing with it. That was back 20, 30 years ago, well, 30 years ago, and it ended up coming up with a product that would make concrete a lot less susceptible to cracking. And when I had Quick Curb, that was the only complaint I ever had, was the cracking. Well, fading was a little bit of an issue and a little bit of delamination, but the cracking was by far the biggest issue. And when you've done millions of feet, it doesn't take a lot of, when you have thousands of cracks, the customers were pretty upset, and there's really nothing you could do about it. So that's how I found Boulder Magic, and they guaranteed it not to crack. So it was very interesting to me to see how they did it. And so I visited the home office, which was in Rantoul, Illinois. This was back in actually 2010, the first time. And they explained how it works. And basically, it has several different things that it does. First thing is it makes it where the concrete stays soft for about 3 hours, so you have time to form it, carve it, put patterns on it, whatever you want to. Where other concrete, after about 5 minutes, it starts getting hard and you can't do anything with it. And then once it does cure, it cures really, really fast, which it causes a heating element to happen internally. It basically bakes itself from the inside out, and it caused it to where it's just one solid piece. All the capillaries are filled up. There's no voids. And what happens, it makes it completely moisture proof. And for anybody that knows concrete, that's what actually cracks concrete is moisture getting in it, expands, contracts, and eventually you get a crack. Ours is done so well that you actually don't even have to put metal in it, which is unheard of in concrete. So anyway, when we have people that come in that actually have worked with concrete and they hear that we don't have rebar in it, they just can't figure that out. And like you said, we've probably had 100 people try to copy it. And because there's so many products in it and it has to be done exactly at the right temperature, the right pH, the exact mixing time, and there's probably 30 different deals you have to do with it to make it right. And therefore, it takes about a month to make a batch of it. So that's one of the things that we have to be careful of, is that we keep enough in stock, because you can't just run out and make a batch tomorrow and send it. You know, it's like the baby formula right now. It's just, I think the company's going to start up here in a week or so, but it's 2 months before they actually have it. Kind of the same theory. So somebody like me understands that. You know, a lot of people think, well, if they're opening tomorrow, they should have it in a few days. Well, there's a process that you have to follow. And if you don't, it won't come out right. And that's what luckily we have. Even Sherwin-Williams, who we have now partnered with, that told us they could have that formula in 2 weeks. It took them 6 months, and then it didn't work at all. And they since have stopped trying to recreate.
So they tried. So
absolutely.
They tried to kind of reverse engineer
exactly right
what you have, and they put all of their incredibly smart people, highly paid people, on the project of how do we copy this thing, reverse engineer it, and they couldn't.
It's just like Coke. You see all these little machines that you can take and you can put the deal to carbonate it and all that. But when you get done, it absolutely doesn't taste like Coke or anything else. It's probably close, but not enough. And then the time frame, or the time that it takes you to make it, and it's just not even worth doing. It's just easier to go buy a Coke. So I understand that. And we gave them the product. We gave them a 5-gallon bucket of it. We handed it to them, said, here, have at it. And what happened, it's kind of funny. My COO, who's one of the inventors, he told me that the first thing they're going to have is cracking problems. And when they came back 6 months later and we built some rocks and went to pick them up and they cracked, immediately actually crumbled. And he said the reason that it did that is because they're very smart and they're doing exactly what you would think you would do. And it's actually not. So it's kind of funny. That was the day that I felt like, man, we may have something here. Because I was always wondering myself, it's not patented. I'm spending a lot of money on this thing. Am I losing my butt here one day? And it actually, we've had a lot of franchisees, people that work for the franchise that left and decided, well, I'll just do this on my own. It's not that. When I had my carpet cleaning business, the guys would see how we were doing, and I'll just get a carpet cleaning machine and a pickup, and I'm in business. And they actually did, where this here they can't. So it's just kind of a comfort knowing that they absolutely can't.
I like that. There's a lot of franchisees that want to be a part of a franchisor that has something that's truly unique, a thing that is the big differentiator. And I see this product, like this is the first time that's what attracted me to these brands so much, was this unique thing. And sometimes this thing, the uses of it are like for curbing. You're not doing the curbing any less expensive. It's not cheaper to do curbing. And correct me if I'm wrong with any of this, Butch, but it's not cheaper. You're just delivering a much better product for a very similar price. And that's a competitive advantage, a much better product, especially in areas that are used to cracking. Then the other thing is, on the Boulder design side of things, you can, use the product, put it in there, and you can make gravestones, for an example, and you're able to produce a gravestone at an incredibly less expensive price,
a fraction of the cost,
and much quicker. So a real story. When we were meeting, I think we were just getting ready to go look at some of your work at the University of or Baylor. We went out there to go look at what you've done out there, and you're like, hey, wait a second. Then a real customer was coming in, and they were looking for a product like that. I think it was a gravestone, wasn't it?
Oh, you're right. A memorial bench.
A memorial bench.
Well, they were looking at a headstone. They had been down to, I won't say the name of the company, but a memorial company down the road, literally less than a mile. And it has been now a year And they've been now at a point of arguing back and forth that, hey, you promised us 8 months. And so, and they still to this day haven't got it. So I told the guy, I said, hey, we can do anything you want with this. He talked about a flat headstone. And I said, well, what about a memorial bench? And he goes, well, we only have 4,000 to work with. And I said, well, you could get 7 memorial benches for that. And he goes, no way. And I said, yeah. I said, let's make you a real nice one for 1,200. That's a fourth of, what you were spending. And we did a mock-up of it. And he said, that is 10 times nicer and 4 times cheaper. And he goes, but the catch is, how long is it going to take to get it? And I said, I'll have it completely done in 4 weeks. Reality is I could give it to him in 3 days, but we just don't want to lose the value of doing it too quick. So we just tell him 4 to 6 weeks for delivery. This guy has seen the growth of our company since I bought it back in 2016. He goes, yeah, I drive by all the time. He goes, I've seen how you've grown. I see the new rocks. It's really exciting. And he goes, I really didn't even know you did headstones. So I happened to see one outside your building the other day. So I stopped in, and he goes, it's just amazing how quick y'all can make them and how nice they are. And they just look more colorful. They look just not as drab as your typical gray and black headstones. And again, we can put anything you want on, whether it be a picture, we can embed things in it, anything you want. If you can think of it, we can put it on there, and again, at a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the time. So
I like it. One of the things that I notice is just when people are there, you start to get around your corporate office, they see you at a show, or they just see some of the products that are created, people's minds just start going, and they kind of light up like, wow, this is so simple. I don't need a ton of employees. I can just,
right.
I can just start. And when we were meeting there, I was there with one of my business partners, and then a friend came along as well. And he owns Orange Theory Fitness. He's a multi-unit franchisee with them, does very well. He was in these meetings just, as a tag along. That's what good friends do. And he's got a sales mind, and he was in the meeting, and he looked over and he's like, hey, everyone, I just emailed my brother and said, you need to start one of these. And he wouldn't stop talking about it for the next 3 days. And we went to the airport together. He went back home. I went back home, but he's just like, couldn't stop thinking about this. And I was in other meetings in Austin where things were just coming up. My other business partner just kept talking about it as well, and all of the uses for this. So it's a fun business, affordable business, not very expensive, that has amazing margins, but you don't need a lot of people to run it as well. So like, what does a typical franchisee have? Do it on the Boulder side and on the Border side?
Typically, and it's funny you were talking about that. I was at a franchise show in Houston this last weekend, and my neighbor was a steam cleaning company. That's a big truck that would go clean parking lots and stuff like that. And he was next to us for 2 days. And again, long story short, we disclosed him yesterday, and he'll buy a franchise on the 15th day of his disclosure. He said he can't get it fast enough. Reason being, he watched how our booth stayed full the whole time. I think we got 30 leads, and he got 3 the entire time. And so he started the same thing. He goes, what's the difference here? Butch? He goes, how many employees do you need? Things like that. And I said, well, for Boulder, we actually, from 1 to maybe 3, depends on how big you go. We have a lot of what we call hobbyists that came in back in the day before I acquired it, that they're retired farmers or policemen or whatever it may be, that just wanted to make an extra amount of money per year and not have to dip into their savings or retirement. And this afforded them to do that. And so they do everything. They do the sales, they make the rocks. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you should run it as a business. And it's kind of a joke around here. I've never made one rock yet, but I've sold, millions of dollars worth of rocks, but I haven't made one. So, and it's a standing joke that, I always say there's no money in building rocks or putting down border. There's a whole bunch of money in selling it. So on that method, 1 to 3 for Boulder. And you do everything inside, so you're not going out to a person's house. And the main reason is we just don't want them to see how easy it is. You do a headstone in an hour and sell it for $2,000 or $3,000, and you just don't want somebody to see how much time it took. That's why we tell them 4 to 6 weeks for delivery. Whereas to Border, we're doing that on site because it's extruded out of a machine. So you need, if you're going to be working on the truck, you probably need 2 more people on top of that. And we can do, normally if it's in fact, we did a 200 foot yesterday, right after you left, Eric, at another tennis place. The tennis guys seen the one at Baylor and immediately wanted theirs done. So they did 200 feet. They did go over and prep it the day before, and they started yesterday morning on the border. And by 11 o'clock, they were done. And typically, border, we do about $16 a foot. And on an average, it's going to cost you a couple dollars a foot to put it in, just for numbers wise,
And that's pretty typical. That's kind of like you're saying those numbers are kind of market numbers for any brand doing a job like that.
Right.
Whether you have the secret sauce in or it's your brand, like that's a typical rate. Being a typical rate, that's what you'll charge.
And ours just comes out, ours on the average, the competitors, they might be at 2 to possibly 2,500 PSI, and ours comes out at a lot of times over 5,000 PSI. And therefore we can guarantee them for 10 years with a limited liability contract or warranty. But I've seen curbing they've had out there for 30 years almost, and it doesn't look like not a difference in the day. If you did one now, if you did another job right beside it, you can't hardly tell the difference. It's just that durable. And it looks really cool. We can match your house, any colors you want, any pattern. We can make it look like bricks, cobblestone, flagstone, whatever you want. And it usually, once you get your job done, it takes how your weed eater string, you have to keep popping more string out when you're going around bricks or fencing or any of that. This here, one piece of string does your whole yard, and it looks really, really clean. A lot of houses, we'll do one house and we'll end up staying in that neighborhood for 2 or 3 months sometimes, just because the neighbors see it. And it just looks that good. And it's the most maintenance-free yard you can have. It keeps all the mulch in, it keeps the grass out. So kind of a neat product.
So what are some of the things that, as you took over this brand and really turned it into, because you became a franchisor, and I've seen what you do as a franchisor, as the one that's responsible for everything. And how I was with you at a show and you had a franchisee come up. We were in Vegas together. You had a franchisee come up that I think lives in North Dakota. And he's like, hey, I need some help with this, that, and the other. And instead of saying, hey, this is what you do, you're like, hey, I just might come up and meet you or help you with this. So just give us some insight into the difference that you've learned being a franchisee to a franchisor, and how are you, like, what's your philosophy of what a good franchisor does for their franchisees?
It's funny you say that. I was, in all fairness, probably a pain in the butt when I was a franchisee. Of course, everything I thought I was always right on, later down the road when I became a franchisor, I understood it a little better. So there's a lot of things that I wasn't right on, and there's a lot of things I absolutely still think I was. And so understanding that, now that I'm a franchisor, I definitely take those things in really, really well before I make decisions. I didn't ever have anybody come down and help me as a franchisee, and in all fairness, didn't think I needed it. And if I'd have listened more, I would have. So one of the things that does make it easier when I get a younger guy or somebody that, it's nothing worse. Somebody buys a franchise and then a week later they're telling you how to run it. I tell them guys, look, I've been there, I've done it. Trust me, you really need to listen to us. You're probably smarter than us, but you're not smarter than us at this. So please listen for a little bit, kind of spare us your brilliance. But a lot of the decisions we make, I think back when I was a franchisee, and what would have helped me more. So Shannon is who the guy was that was he was in Minot, North Dakota. And I actually left West Palm Beach to go visit him and help him with a show, no charge. I never charge the franchisees. And I tell them, if I'm not working that weekend and I'm not booked, I will go up and help you. And sometimes if you show them as opposed to tell them, because of the weather, I got there late. I think I got there about 2:00, and the show had started at 8:00 that morning. And when I got there, he had 2 leads in his little fishbowl, if you will, and was listening the way he was doing it. And it wasn't quite how we taught. It wasn't real far off, but just little things that make a difference he wasn't doing. So I said, let me, have a few customers and just kind of listen and see if it's, if there's if you recognize the difference, and immediately he could see it. And I think we ended up with 30 something leads that day, and we only had about 3 hours left in the show. But again, it was just little things. And he said, Butch, that absolutely changed my whole company. And it wasn't magic. It wasn't impossible to do. It was just little things that he had left out. And again, when you show somebody, and now we've recorded a lot of those things, so we have them archived for franchisees to pull up when they need it. We're going to mic up myself and some of our other franchisees that do real well and put those on there, because they'll find out you don't have to be a high pressure salesman, what we call the carnival barkers, or the used car salesman mentality. If you just have a passion for it, and it's just like talking about your wife or kids. That's not hard at all. Nobody struggles talking about them, but if they think they're selling something, it just seems harder. So just have a conversation about your product, and if the passion's there, it absolutely shows. You don't have to fake it or anything. It's just going to come through. And with our franchisees and our products, that they're kind of fun, so it's easy to talk about them. It's a fun topic.
I want to shift gears a little bit, because I know, like you said, John Hayes is helping you with your book. We have a mutual friend, Gary Finley. We had him on the podcast that just released not too long ago. And he's a mutual friend of both of ours. And he just came out with his book. Why don't you share with the audience just a little bit of your story? Go back, the things that you think are important, or things that you want your great grandkids to know about you that are going to be documented in the book. Like, who is Butch, the guy that grew up to kind of make you into the man that you are today?
Again, in the book, there'll be some more things revealed, probably that you don't even know at this point, Eric. Very, very tough upbringing. Like I said, we were joking today with some clients here that, they were talking about what college did I go to and this and that. And I was like, dude, I cheated, or I wouldn't even have got out of high school. I had 2 girlfriends that got me through English. I wouldn't even have graduated. So I didn't have a great upbringing. But what I did learn, even with my mom back then, I never had a real dad. There's a lot of drugs and alcohol. But even with all that, she really instilled hard work to me. Even though she wasn't the greatest parent in the world, she worked hard. And I could always remember that. And so I did learn that. I remember being up at 4 or 5 in the morning, picking corn, and then have to go sit in front of the mall and sell it all day as your friends are coming up. It's embarrassing as hell, but you did it. And I didn't even realize it was embarrassing back then, because it was work, and I enjoyed doing that. I had a little Coke bottle route from when I was little. I literally would, back in the day, you got 5 cents for a Coke bottle, or 20 cents for a big one. And this will date me, but back then it was 55 cents for a Big Mac. So I needed 11 Coke bottles. And I actually had taken some shopping carriages from Publix, which was in Florida, and started going around the neighborhood and pick the bottles up and return them. And then I ended up having 2 other kids getting them for me. And so I brought all 3 carriages, and I would give them 2 cents per bottle. And that was my first foray into business, and never really looked back, and just kept doing those things. And I learned a lot at the Dwyer Group, a ton of stuff. It was a different era back then. There's a lot of things you could do back then you don't do now. But a lot of the good things that Don and Dina instilled in me never failed to stay the same. Just general business practices that people don't do these days. Answer the phone, show up when you're supposed to, and you can build a good business and have integrity when you're doing it, which sometimes when things are down, it's hard to do that, believe it or not, but you have to. And those are some things that we've built the business with. And I think my kids would be proud of it. I think they are today. And the older they get, the more proud they are, as they realize they don't know everything. Mostly my son, he works with me in the business, and we have our moments. But at the end of the day, I think he's starting to realize how hard it is to run a business when you do everything on the up and up, and you truly care about the franchisees, and we do. As we've had some different equity groups looking at us, we really are looking more for what is best for the franchisees more than just Butch. And those are things that I've had to teach my son, that, hey, sometimes it isn't the most money or this or that. It's what is the best thing, for the franchisees. And that's how I met Erik, actually. So I appreciate him and the way he runs his stuff. But again, at the end of the day, I think what we've built here we did have a start on it already, but it was a tough start. And the way we did it, I think we did it the right way. We would never try to cheat anybody or anything like that. We didn't always take the easy way out, which sometimes would have been less expensive, but we always did the right thing in our hearts. And the franchisees see that. And again, I think that would be the biggest thing, that they know I care about the franchisees. And there's very few, if you called all of ours, I don't think there's but a handful that would tell you differently. And those would probably do that for anybody, but again, my son sometimes will say, why are you going out there and doing this and this? I said, well, you know what? They need help. When you're here locally and I can help you all the time, you don't understand that. But what we can do for a franchisee in one day can change their whole life, on how or whether they'll be successful or not. So it's a very little thing for me to do compared to what it does for them. So we will always do that. It will never stop. And we enjoy it. We've done well here, and it's not hard to teach other franchisees those same practices. And especially a young guy, I really enjoy taking a young one who's very motivated, honest, got a good work ethic, and take him and make a life changer out of it by doing things the right way. And just, again, doing things very, very well. And if you're taught from the start, you don't have bad habits. And sometimes that's the worst person, is once they've got used to doing something wrong. It's like, I've done a lot of coaching in baseball, and you get a guy who's always hit one way, it's hard to change those habits. So if you can get them young, we encourage you to do that. But I think, like you said, go ahead.
That's interesting too, because I was talking to the same gentleman that was with me that owns the Orange Series, and we were talking. We were playing some outdoor games yesterday before I flew out of Austin, and in the way in, on the way in, he said, Eric, he's like, this would be a great business for a father-son team, or like me,
Right.
He wants to be the investor. He's like, if I invested the money into someone younger that really wanted to get into business, had the hustle, had the sales, could hire the person to do the boulders or whatever it is. Like, it's just such a great business for that type of model. So another friend showed up, and we played some games, and he's like, wow, then I sent you a bunch of areas yesterday in a text. I said, hey, Butch, are these areas available? Because he's like, I've got people that I know in all these different markets. And he's just thinking, who can I, as a successful business person, partner with on an inexpensive brand that has amazing margins to be able to get a return on my investment? So I think that's going to be fun to see how Boulder and Boulder both grow through that mentoring relationship. Right now, you've mentored a lot of the people, a lot of the young franchisees, but think about, how that might just, grow as other people that are investors continue to do that with people that they know and set them up for success in business. So I think that's a lot of fun.
Right. And it's fun. It's, when we always tell everybody, and I even tell the franchisee prospects, if they, like at this show this weekend, I've got, between 20 and 30 people. And the first thing I'll tell them, I said, if you didn't lose any sleep over this, you're probably really not qualified, because it has to excite you a little. And I had a couple today that I talked to for probably 2 hours. And they said, Butch, we haven't slept since we left there, because we're thinking of all the things we can do with it, how our son can get in it, our daughter can paint or whatever. So we have a lot of families that are in it. I'll bet you at least a fourth of all our franchisees are father-son type of situations. So it's really neat to see the dad wanting to help the son, and then the ones that listen, they just do so much better. And if we get a knucklehead out there, we'll try to get them to some of the other people that are doing well. And you can see the transformation where all right, well, let me listen for a few days and see how that goes. And it's just neat to see somebody that kind of a know-it-all, as kids are. And I was not the exception. I was just as bad as anybody. I have a mentor, John Apple, which Eric has met a few times. And if you ever met him, you'd understand it. And he is one of the ones that just gets through to me and says, hey, Butch, maybe consider this next time, or this or this. And I respect him enough to listen. And I have learned that, if you know everything, it's really hard to learn anything. And I told my son, don't be 50 like I was before I realized I don't know it all. So again, it's kind of neat to see those dads helping the younger kids. And a lot of those will get into groups. I was talking about a group that, to be a better father and husband type of stuff. And when you get around other ones, it just makes you want to do better, I think. You learn little tactics and ways to do things better. And that, at the end of the day, that's what a franchise is. You've got tons of mistakes being made, and you don't want to make them again, and you want to share those with people, and you also want to share the good things that you've learned. And that's what we do. We share all those different things, good or bad, and it makes everybody better. And then we have our advisory council that we meet once a month and discuss what's going well and what's not. We don't always tell them just to come to the table with good things. We want to know what is not working. Is Facebook done this now? They've learned how to stop you from doing this. Well, how do we get around it? And we share those different informational facts, and then we share that with the rest of the group, and that's how we grow. We learn as much from our franchisees as they learn from us, and we don't mind telling you that.
That's a good partner. I've seen too many brands that have that adversarial relationship with franchisees, and they always want to be the one telling them what to do. This is how you do it, blah, blah, blah. Right. And there is an element of that, but then there's also the side of like, hey, we don't know everything. Franchisees are out on the ground doing it all the time. And I know that you're a franchisee as well, but learning from other people in different markets, what's working, what's not working, why is it not working, and solve problems together. Talk about that advisory council, because I've noticed multiple conversations happening in the Franchise Secrets Facebook group, and they're asking about the advisory council. Most of the time, it's too late. It's an adversarial relationship is why a franchisee wants an advisory council, but there's different ways to do it. So why don't you shed some light on that?
Yeah, and you hit it right on the head. Typically, things have mounted to a position where they do it, and it's more adversarial. What we have done when we first considered it, we thought, okay. In fact, I don't even get on them sometimes because the franchisees will say and talk a little bit different if I'm not there. And we want to truly find out what's the good and bad in the franchises. And when we elected or decided who was going to be on it, we had to make sure, first thing, they were 100% on board. They were able to talk about things. And if they all agreed they want to do this and we just don't agree with it, they're okay. They're not going to be mad or anything. And, again, as a franchisee, they think, well, we can just do all this because it doesn't cost anything. Well, it does. So we're going to take the best things out of those conversations and talk about how that we can get them done. And if we can't that minute, how can we work towards it? And when you have a good franchise advisory council is what we call them, it can make a lot of difference. And we tell them at any time, if you don't have the time to be on there or you don't feel it's going good for you, it's okay to get off, and we switch them out sometimes, or we haven't switched out any yet. Everybody's elected to stay on. But again, we took not all our top franchises money-wise. Some of them are just our most dedicated franchises that run the system right. And that's what we look for more than just say the guys that are doing the most, which the ones that are doing the most typically are running the system right anyway. But some of those guys are very busy and didn't have the time. But we wanted to bring the people that are most dedicated or running the system, as close to what we teach as we can. Because again, that's where we get a lot of our information. And I'm probably on every other one. So, and what we've learned is now they really don't do any different. They know that I care about them, and they can speak very freely with me. My phone is open to every franchisee. I know every one of their names. I know where they live. I know a lot of their kids, and they know that they can talk to me anytime. I'm not always going to give them what they want, but I'm definitely going to listen to them and see if I can help in any way and find out if they are struggling, why are they? And it's normally user errors. Usually, and they'll tell you once you call them out on it, say, hey, how many proofs did you do last week? How many did you do last month? And I said, and I'm going to find out. I want you to show me them, And so they say, all right, I know. And a lot of times it's just very simple things that if you do the general business practices, it gets better. And then the franchise council advisory board, they'll help those franchisees. We'll tell them, hey, these are the 10 names we have right now. Call one of them and see if there's something. Go visit one, stay with them for a day or two. Come to a show with me for a couple hours. I don't want you there the whole time, but a couple hours and just watch how we do it. And again, sometimes if you see it, it's better than somebody telling you. And all these advisory council people are more than glad to dedicate some time to the franchisees. And it's a fun discussion sometimes. It's not Again, there's nothing nasty ever. I don't even remember it going that way again, but it's set up that way. It's not set up for a gripe session. It's like, how do we make things better? And again, there's always going to be problems in a franchise system, in your family, everywhere. There's always that, but it's how you handle those problems and issues is what makes the difference. And when you have franchisees that truly know you care, then it's a lot easier than, if they think you're just there for the money to drain them of every penny they can get. It's a different atmosphere, and we don't have that at all. You always have a couple knuckleheads, like no matter what, but 99% of them truly are here for the right reasons.
What's
them to start with?
What's your best knucklehead story? When were you the biggest knucklehead? You've said that twice.
When I was. Oh wow,
Yeah.
you can pick. Well, in all honesty, when I was at Rainbow, for several years, I was either the top franchisee or close to it. And you paid 2% into national accounts. Well, in all the years I was there, I never remember getting one job on the national account. So I was very disgruntled about that, and voiced my opinion a lot. And again, it's funny because after I became a franchisor, I emailed Dina Dwyer and some of the other ones that were always above me and apologized for the way I behaved as a franchisee. Because now that I'm a franchisor, I sure understand it a lot different. So again, now, and again, on that same subject, that was probably my biggest sore spot was the national accounts. Now, when I went to start the national accounts program with Boulder, I thought about that and I said, okay, how can I keep them happy? If I'm going to collect money from them, how can I make sure it's used in the right way? And the way we did it, I called several franchisees. I won't go into detail with the facts of it, but I called and said, hey, what if we did this? It won't cost you a dime unless we get you a job. And they all jumped right on it. But again, because of me being a franchisee for, well over 20 years with several franchises, I understood that a lot better. And do I do everything right? Absolutely not. But it's usually not from lack of effort. And we try to. So, but that was probably my worst. I'm sure there's plenty. If you anybody, she could, I don't know which one she remembers, but anyway.
So going from franchisee to franchisor and staying a franchisee, like what do you like about being a franchisee and a franchisor at the same time? And I've done the similar type thing as an area developer. I owned locations and was an area developer, area rep. But what do you like? What are the advantages, the pros and cons of being a franchisee and a franchisor?
A franchisee, literally everything I've ever been in, I don't want to sound like a bragging situation, but I always was either the top one or close to it. And I didn't need a lot of pushing or somebody to help or want to make me have drive. I just automatically did it. I'm competitive in nature. So not only do I like the money from working hard, but I like to, be the top one if I can. And so I always did very well. I never had any problem getting business. And so it was always fun for me. But as a franchisee, I couldn't make calls that I would like for change or things like that because I was just a franchisee. And I struggle with that. But what I've learned, even with some of the top people at Dwyer Group back in the day, and they said, Butch, you have drive like most others, that nobody else does. So we can't teach what you do. So sometimes what you want to change is because you do it. I don't know if like I described when I coach baseball, I can teach you to hit, I can teach you to throw, slide, all that, but I can't teach you to want to run through a fence to catch it. And sometimes you either have it or you don't. And in franchising or business, I always felt like I had it. And there was parts of it that I was absolutely weak in, that I had to hire people that were a lot better than me. 10 years ago, I couldn't hire a John Apple or, some of these people I have now because I was intimidated by them. Now they make me look good. Our business runs very well. And it's definitely not just because of me. It's because of who's around me. As a franchisor, what I struggle with are the pros and cons. The pros is I can do things and it's easier to make change, but you do have to make sure it's a good change for everybody, not just the way you do things. So you have to take a group effort. The bad part is it's a huge struggle for me when somebody won't work. I will travel around and I go to a franchisee and when you can't get it through to them that all they have is excuses. Well, this guy does this and this guy does that. And I say, use Bobby as a name, Bobby, it doesn't matter what another franchisee does or that or this, or they say, well, you don't know my area. That's the, the famous saying, everybody got together and moved to Idaho that won't buy a rock. It's a conspiracy against you. That I struggle with a lot, that I can't make people want to be successful no matter how hard you try. But the nice thing is when you take somebody that really wants to and doesn't have all the tools, but they just work their butts off and make it work. That's the good. The bad is when you got a guy who maybe was given a franchise or doesn't have a lot of skin in the game, or mom and dad bought it, or, where they just don't they have an out if it doesn't work. Most everything I did, if it didn't work, I was out, period. And so, but I never looked at it that way. I just, I took advantage of every franchise I ever had on making money, and it was fun, So again, there's goods and bads on both of them. I always say that one day I might not own this corporation, but I will never get rid of my Boulder and Border franchise itself. I've done a lot of different businesses in my life. And like I always say, I don't think there's anything out there that's just easy, but I've never found anything easier than this, to go out and make some money. So again, not making people be successful that you really want to is a big down. But again, taking a kid that doesn't know a whole lot and watching grow over the years, and all of a sudden he's got a new car, boat, or house, and just really neat to see that. That would be definitely an advantage.
And I've seen that, and I just echo that. I mean, as you say that, and you're like, I don't want to brag, but I tell people, as a franchise, if you're a business owner or a franchisee, or if you're and then you're like one of the best, and you go to franchise it, you are now going to, it's good because you can leverage you're leveraging human resources, people, franchisees, whether you're a franchisor or an area developer, you are growing out a region like I did in Austin with 42 Liberty Tax locations. I leveraged everybody around me, but some of them were better than me. Most of them were worse than me. And so it's great when you get somebody that is just that rock star, that superstar, that is better than even you were. But the chances are you're going to, like most brands, I mean, most brands are a third below average, a third average, and a third above average. So if you are above average and you've got 2/3 below average, well, that can be frustrating. You just have to be okay with that as an area developer, as a franchisor, whatever it is. And that is definitely one of the challenges. So I just 100% echo that. And then with excuses, like you mentioned, like it doesn't work in my territory. My territory is different. My area is different. And as when I was with a bunch of area developers within three different brands as an area developer, I was in California as one, Texas as another, and it was the same with all of them. That was the kind of the running inside joke, like it's different in my area. Even as a candidate, a prospect buying a franchise, you think your area is different, and and there are nuances. I'm not saying every time always, but that is a very common thing. So what you just mentioned is the common dilemma. And that, I mean, we've never really talked about that before in the podcast. So I'm glad we did, because I have real life experience in that with multiple brands, and so do you. So that's
every franchisor. I'm on the board of directors at a college in Florida in West Palm Beach that actually teaches franchising. At first, they were the only ones that did that. Now there's 2 or 3. I think there's one in Pennsylvania. And I'm down there with the CEO of Chick-fil-A, a lot of big brands that are light years ahead of me. And it's funny, we all get up there and we joke. I wanted to have at our last convention or reunion, top 10 reasons why a franchisee can't make it. And all those, you don't know my area, and people here, they don't eat really, or this and that, there's always an excuse, or, well, somebody next door did this. There's always a reason not to. And then the top 10 reasons why people do make it. And again, it's funny that it's almost a mimic of each one of them's list, if you will. I got one from Ray Titus, his son, at the Titus Center, and got one from a few other, Gary Finley, with Restoration One, and they're all very redundant. The same thing, that the ones that are successful have the same thing, and the ones that aren't. And it's funny, the ones that aren't successful, they find each other. They all sit together at a group. They sit together at a table. They sit there and talk about how come they justify why they're not making it. And I tell them at the first reunion, hey, if you talk to one of those guys just get away from them. Their conversation is why you can't make it. And then you go to the next table where they're the good ones, and their conversation is how they sold more of these at this show and this show where they did this, and you can sell more this way and you get better money this way. And that's their conversations. It's all positive on how to do things. And the ones that can't make it, they just feed off each other. But again, you're always trying to bring those guys up. And if you can't, you just got to get rid of them. And as sad as that is, if they just don't want to follow or do the system, it makes you wonder why they even bought to start with. And now we vet them pretty well. A new franchisor sometimes will take some in that maybe down the road they wouldn't have. If there's any advice I could ever give to a franchisor is if you have a gut feeling about them, just don't take them, because you will pay for it for the next 5-10 years. But it's going to happen. But again, get them with the right people. It's just like a kid that starts doing things they shouldn't. It's because of usually who they're hanging around. So if you can get them around good people, that makes a difference. And the same with the franchisees. Get them around good, positive people. I told this one kid one time, I said, if you want to know who you are, look around at your friends and look at them. That's who you are. Yep. And if you don't like what you see, then you might want to get different friends. And it's the same with franchise, same with anything, get around the good people, learn what they're learning, do what they do, and you'll be a lot more successful, and your conversations will change. They're not from a negative, go from a negative to a very positive, and it makes it a lot more fun for the day. So if there's any advice,
that's such good advice. And like you said, just globally in general, that's great advice. So when I left you, before that, I was in Austin. I had 2 different meetings with some of Austin's best business people. Ty Lopez flew in to talk about some investment stuff, to give us investors updates on some of his brands like Pier 1 and Dress Barn and, Models and Steinmart, things that I've invested in. And so he was there, some really brilliant people, way more successful than me. And then around the table, we were having conversations, and we're all multi-millionaires. Everybody around the table was, multi-millionaires, and we're successful in our own right. But then the conversations around the table weren't like, hey, how great am I? What have I learned? The conversations around the table were, hey, I was talking to this guy that was, if the benchmark is how many millions, he's 500 million, a billion. Or he's got this company and it's worth this. And whatever that benchmark is, trying to learn from people that are ahead of you in that benchmark, whether it's a net worth, it's a business size, it's a business valuation. You want to be learning from those people. And if the benchmark's different, so that's the business benchmark for me, but there's another benchmark that's more important than business for me. And I know for you too, Butch, and for people in your corporate office, because we've talked about it, but that's being a better dad, a better husband, a better father, and a better mentor to our kids. And that benchmark is different. And that looks like, boy, I want to be around somebody and learn from the person that's been married for 50 years. I want to be around the person that has 3 kids that are in their 40s that are all doing amazing. Like, what did they do? Now, not all of it is just exactly what they did. There might be some luck involved with that, or bad luck. But the point of it is, you want to be around people that are doing better than you, no matter what, because it's so easy to get caught up in whether you're doing horrible or you're doing amazing. If you think, if you're not looking for that extra leveling up, you're going to get stuck and you're going to start going downhill. And I was talking to a mother or an aunt of somebody that's crushing it in business, young 20s, making bunches of money, just piles of money. And she said, Erik, he's the smartest guy. You can't tell him anything because he's just, he's doing so well and he thinks he knows everything. I'm just like, man, there's that kid and he's doing well amongst his peer group. He's crushing it, but go talk to a billionaire, somebody that owns, the Houston Rockets or Mark Cuban or Richard Branson or Elon Musk. He's got nothing on them. So just like when you said that, it just struck a chord in me to kind of go down this tangent, because that's like something that you and I align together in many different areas, but that is absolutely one of them. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. So, usually anybody that's been out there around the block a little bit, you'll learn no matter how good you do, there's somebody better. And some of the guys that make the most money, they're not the best people in the world. They might think they are, but I think you need a good balance of all of it. At the end of the day, like I said, if my kids one day can say, "Hey, my dad did that, and he did it the right way," that would be a big win for me, more than the money. And don't get me wrong, I want money. As you know, we've all made our millions, and some of us kept it, and some of us didn't. But it's funny. Like I've said before, when I go down to West Palm Beach to the get-togethers with all these top people, in about 2 minutes or less, I can tell you if that guy is the one that built the company or if it's the son that just had it handed to him. Night and day. The ones that have struggled and worked hard, they're very humble. They're not dressed in the nicest suits or anything, and they're willing to talk to us guys that are smaller and help us and say, "Hey, we've been there. Here's some advice. Maybe might think about doing this or this." And it's really neat to get around those guys and listen to them. And some of them you would never even believe. Like walking around the room with them, and all of a sudden, you find out who they are, and this guy owns 100 tilted kilts, or whatever. They're just absolutely rich, but they don't talk like it. And if you talk to them without knowing what they do, you would never know it. They're not bragging. They're not doing any of that. They just truly, they've made their money. They can make more if they want, but they truly enjoy helping people. And that's a really neat thing to get involved with. And when you think you've done well, there's just so many people above you, no matter who you are. Maybe except for Elon.
Yeah,
he might be the exception. And so anyway, but it's really neat. Franchising itself has been a huge thing for me, coming from an extremely poor family to where the sky's the limit. And honestly, a lot of it's just how hard you want to work and how smart you work. And I've definitely done a lot of the not smart. And in the last few years, definitely have change some different ways, start listening to people that's been there, done it, and not only listen, do it. And that can make a big difference. And again, back to the advisory group, that's what those guys are for. Our last reunion, it was one of the neatest get-togethers I've ever been in my life, and I've been to hundreds of them. The new guys were all talking to the more seasoned guys. The excitement was all over the room. It was fun. No negativity. Most all those guys, we've weeded those out, so we're pretty much clean of that. And it just makes such a better environment when everybody's talking. And again, the way the more seasoned and higher volume guys were helping the new ones, it was just really a lot of fun. And anybody that was ever considering getting in a franchise, if you'd have been there, you absolutely would have bought one. It was just a very cool time for us. And it's not easy to get there. Sometimes it's a little bumpy road getting there, and we found like we're there now. We just got to take off. So
it's never easy getting there. No. Success, there's a road to success there. There's always a road to success, and it doesn't look like what most people think it looks like. And I love like what you said. I mean, they were having fun. I think business is fun. When I came to Austin and came to Waco, I was with two of my best friends, got to hang out with you. We had fun. You have people that just adore you there at the corporate office. You respect them. I just love everything about it. So I'm just a huge fan of doing business with people that you absolutely love hanging out with. Butch, how do people find you?
Well, you can go for Boulder Designs. It's boulderdesigns.net, and BorderMagic is .com, bordermagic.com. And you can go there. You can Google my name, Butch Mogavero, Mogavero, and I'm pretty transparent. So I actually got my cell number on the deal there. I've got a book coming out. It's called Side Effects in Business and Life. And I met my real dad about 4 years ago. I don't know if we have time. A quick story
yes.
Just met him through ancestry.com or whatever that is. I don't know what it's called, but somebody called me and said, "Hey, I think I know who your dad is." And I said, "Well, I thought I always knew." He didn't have anything to do with us, so it wasn't a big deal. And so anyway, found out who he was, and with that acquired a sister and brother, and met my sister for the first time at the Orlando Home and Garden Show. So I told her, I said, "I don't know how much time I'll have. If it's busy, we'll talk as much as I can." So she goes over there and just, kept staying there the whole time and kept seeing all these people come up and wanting border done. Not necessarily wanting the franchise. It was just a home and garden show. So 90% of them are just looking for work to be done. And the next day she calls me and says, "Hey, what about me taking the franchise?" I said, well, I can't sell you a franchise. We just met and I'm your brother. You know, if it doesn't work, you're going to hate me. And she goes, no, I want it. She goes, if I have to, I'm going to use somebody to call in and use a fake name to get it. She goes, I want it. I seen how many people wanted it. And so anyway, we ended up selling it. And then that following Sunday, we went to church with my now new dad and mom. And one of the things the preacher preached on was side effects. And it was like, say, if you take this medicine, it might make you gamble. This one might make you not come home, things like that, which I thought was very bogus. And so I talked to my doctor when I got home, and he goes, no, that's actually can happen. Studies have shown. So while I was sitting there in church, I thought about, I've always wondered what a good name for the book. So I thought about side effects in business and life. And I thought about my upbringing and, you know, everything you do, if it's good or bad, it has a side effect. And that's true in life, marriage, business. So if you do the right thing, you're probably going to have good results. And if you do the wrong thing, it's probably not as good results. So that's how I came. I was sitting in church and just thought of that name. And so it's kind of funny, the whole meeting them, and got a really cool brother out of it. He's out in Vegas. He's with the Department of Defense, and just been a neat thing. And now my sister has a franchise. She's booked up 2 or 3 months in advance. Her husband and son both resigned from Disney World just a few months after, are now all working full time in the business, and they absolutely love it. So it's kind of a neat deal for Michelle to do that. And I was actually scared. I was like, man, if she's one of these ones that don't work, how's that going to play out? So anyway, it played out as good as it possibly can. So a life changer for me. So it's kind of fun. So I had to throw that in there.
Well, I am so glad our paths cross for so many different levels. So thanks, Butch. Thanks for your friendship. Thanks for your partnership.
All right.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.